Okay, welcome. Esoteric Duvidism here. I got my big debate with Jean-Francois Gariépy on the public space tomorrow night. Might be 1,000 viewers, big crowd. So I wanted to get some statistics out there and mostly sort in personal debate prep. And yeah, I'm not sure if anyone's going to watch this or join in. And hope someone joins in and wants to help me stream. I'll be putting the screen share and checking the chat every few minutes. Okay, so there's a lot of different angles on the evolution debate and different expertise. My background is more physics, although I had intentionally originally planned on becoming a doctor, did the pre-med requirements, but I really despised evolution. One of the main reasons I didn't go into medicine was because of my dislike of the theory of evolution. And I got involved with the Hare Krishnas, and I used to even set up books, anti-evolution books, do like Harinam and U of M campus or different places, and I put books out anti-evolution. And I really appreciated these gurus would come from India and they'd be very anti-evolution, say evolution is the plague on the West. The biggest problem confronting Western society right now is the plague of the false theory of evolution. So I'll put it on the screen share and we'll get straight to some of these statistics. So we'll start with Pew. I'm a pretty big fan of the Pew survey. And here's from a year ago, Darwin Day, 6 facts about the evolutionary debate. Let me just make sure that it's working right. Okay, number one, only a minority of Americans fully accept evolution through natural selection. 60% of Americans believe humans evolved over time, but only a third of those believe that was solely due to evolutionary processes. Only 1 out of 3 Americans believe in evolution as it's taught in universities. Other people who believe in evolution, maybe like the Catholic Church has put into doctrine, or a lot of Jewish apologists or other sorts, will believe in a combined form of some sort of spiritual force pushing progress forward. And also the disconnect between scientists and general humanity, that of AAAS scientist, American Association of Advancement of Science scientist, 98% believe that humans evolved over time, as opposed to 2% don't. So, the disconnect is between what the scientific consensus is and the general society is huge. It might be one of the biggest disconnects in modern society. If anyone's read Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, evolution is one of those things that has permeated the way we understand science. And science is almost universally taught in an evolutionary way. So it's an interesting point. And say American citizens would think, okay, what percentage of scientists believe that evolution is true? Your average American would say 2/3 probably, when in fact it's almost universal. The third point is the teaching of intelligent design in public schools has been forbidden in the United States. You had the Scopes trial way back where originally it was evolution that was prohibited, but now it's intelligent design that's prohibited. And they go into a few ideas of how to debate evolution, a few greater points of rejecting the wise men for thousands and thousands of years. Like Newton, standing on the shoulders of giants, and physics being based off of the predecessors. So science is largely rejecting the thought of the predecessors of thousands of years, coming into evolution. And hopefully we'll talk about the soul. Here, a division of belief patterns. So you can notice evangelical Protestants are the biggest rejectors of evolution in America, which actually interesting, like the alt-right white nationalism could possibly the biggest target audience, that is a big issue. The majority of people in the target audience for this actually reject evolution, besides Jehovah's Witness, obviously. Here in America, actually Hindus largely accept evolution, as opposed to in India, where they might reject it more so. Jews generally very favorable towards evolution, and Orthodox Christians, Black Protestants. Interesting statistics, and just seeing the divisions of religions, how they look at evolution. And we're going to get more into detail on the science, the conflict between science and religion. And it's interesting also that America, generally Western countries, have a more favorable view towards evolution than America. This one had a few other statistics that were different, dividing up. White evangelical Protestants, 64% humans existed in the present form since the beginning of time. That divine intent. This is from 2016, so you can see the data has switched a little bit over the last few years. And okay, so I'm just talking to myself, but it's good. It's important to do this prep. 5 facts about evolution and religion. Roman Catholic Church has long accepted, or at least not objected to, evolutionary theory. That goes back to 1950, to the encyclical Humani Generis. And 1996, Pope John Paul II even gave greater credence to evolution. And a lot of the same data. Catholics, 25% still say they reject evolution in all forms, even though the popes and the encyclicals have changed that. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to go over. Now, here's another interesting survey, 2015. No, this is Pew. This Global Lab, Religion Among Scientists. This is one of the most conclusive international scientific studies about the beliefs of scientists. A Global Lab, Religion Among Scientists in International Context. And it's just your data about what scientists think about evolution. You could see the huge amount of research. 61,000 scientists sampled, over 22,000 surveyed, 9,000 responded, 600 interviews. So full 9,000 scientists took the survey. And you could say divided up, France, Hong Kong, India, Italy, Taiwan, Turkey, United Kingdom, and United States. So this is one of the most widespread, respected surveys on this topic. And we're just see, what do scientists believe? Do they believe in God or not? And so here, belief among scientists, belief in God among scientists. So you see in Turkey, 85% of scientists at least believe in a higher power, as opposed to agnostic or atheist. And India, 80%, 79% people believe in a higher power. Taiwan, 74%. So you see, actually in the Far East, atheism and agnosticism is much less of a problem than it is in America, which is interesting. And let's look at the end. We see France, where atheism among scientists is over half of them, compared to the Far East. Italy, Hong Kong, United States, it's about even between believers, agnostics, and atheists. And the UK, atheism is creeping ahead. And France, which is really the birthplace of atheism, hopefully we'll have time to discuss the rise of atheism. I just ordered a bunch of books on the subject and when I get my research. But really, modern atheism takes birth in France with Lagrange and Napoleon's famous meeting, where Lagrange was the famous mathematician. Anyone who studied calculus has came across, and he helped solve the problems for celestial mechanics. Newton, Galileo, Kepler, it all came up with laws, but it wasn't good enough to accurately predict the movement of the planets. And it wasn't until Lagrange calculus came around, that it was able to accurately predict it. And they say he presented his theory to Napoleon, and Napoleon asked him, where does God come into your theory? And Lagrange famously says, I have no need for that hypothesis, because before Lagrange, all physicists were basically believers and held that God had something to do with the stability of the principles of the physical nature. So, France, the home of atheism, almost around 200 years ago, now is the most atheistic place in the world. And obviously, JF in Quebec is French of origin, so his atheism is not surprising and fits the demographics. Here's some religious affiliation and more statistics. Zoom out a little bit. So you have in the red, neither religious nor spiritual, to in the green, religious and spiritual. And then you have the blue, religious but not spiritual, yellow, spiritual but not religious, and in the far, the light blue grayish, don't know. So you could see in Turkey has the highest amount, like we saw before. In the Far East, like Taiwan, it's interesting. You have more spiritual but not religious. In India, you have more religious and not spiritual. And Italy, you have less religious and less spirituality. Hong Kong, less spirituality. Hong Kong actually has a higher amount of not referred to as atheism, which was different, but neither religious nor spiritual. And you see it goes high in the United States. More than half of scientists are neither religious nor spiritual. And the UK is higher, and France is the highest of any of them. Attendance in prayer service among scientists, once a month or more. Turkey, the highest, 1/3 of scientists in Turkey attend prayer services once a month or more. I don't know, India, why I guess people didn't answer. India is also pretty high. Italy, high. France, only 5% of scientists attend religious services once a month or more. 81% never or practically never. UK, 60% practically never. United States, 59%, but a bigger division, where 17% of scientists in America are regular worshipers of some sort. Frequency of prayer. So you have prays frequently, every day or more, prays infrequently, or never prays. So Turkey prays frequently, majority, 63% every week. If they're religious Muslims, they might pray 5 times a day. I've met many scientists from Turkey, and they pray. They go to, at least Friday afternoon, or sometimes multiple times a day. They might privately play the Islamic prayer services 5 times a day if they're a Jew or whatever. India, people are very spiritual. 56% pray often. In their form, it's most likely Hinduism. Taiwan, if it's like traditionalism or Confucianism, still 20%. Italy, is mostly a Catholic country. So, if it's saying the rosary or going to mass, 29%. You see United States, 18% pray frequently. 23% at least pray occasionally, infrequently. France, 4%, only 4%. 82% never pray. So these trends are becoming pretty predictable as we see more and more of these. Percentage of scientists with a religious affiliation compared to the general population. So general population, scientists, and interesting, it's pretty equal. You look in Taiwan and Italy and the United States and France, there's a little discrepancy. Like India, almost everyone has a religious affiliation, if it's Hindu mostly, or they have Buddhists or Zoroastrians or Jain. So it's only 3% less of scientists have a religious affiliation than the general public. Turkey, 99% of the general population has a religious affiliation. Turkey's mostly an Islamic country now, 75%. So you can see that might be more likely for atheist or non-religious people to go into science, looking at like Turkey Italy, Taiwan, United States. Still 50% of France have a religious affiliation. Scientists less, 32%. So even, what we talked about with the prayers and how often they pray or go to service, still you might see that scientists in France, 32% would be like, yeah, I'm Christian. Or if they're Jew or whatever, that they would mention a religious affiliation. General population comparison. Percentage of scientists who attend religious services once a month or more compared with the general population. So note that besides for Taiwan, which slightly more scientists attend services than the general population, it's less everywhere. Italy, you see a huge difference between the scientist and the non-scientist, that 54% of Italy's general population goes once or more, most likely to church, whereas where scientists are much less likely to do that. France is pretty secular society, so even though 50% of France consider themselves part of religion, only 11% actually attend services. And for the scientists, United States also 44% of the general population, scientists less. Let's look back at those statistics with 38% of scientists in the US would affiliate with being part of a religion, but only 17% of those would actually go once a month or more to a house of worship. Percentage of scientists who believe there is no God compared with the general public. France, way more. So atheism, is the birthplace in France, but only 17% of the general French public are full-blown atheists. As where 50% of scientists in France are full-blown atheists. And interesting, Taiwan is Hong Kong is reversing the trend in Taiwan a little bit, where Hong Kong, over half of the population, rejects there being a God, and scientists, 26% are less likely to reject there being a God. And saying in Turkey, where almost everyone's religious, or Muslims the official religion, but scientists are 6 times more likely to reject God, and so too in India. So you could see certain trends there. And interesting, I wanted to get these statistics out there. Okay, I got 2 people watching. Let me see if Sarah Esoteric wants to talk evolution. Scientists. Yeah, I wanted to prepare for the debate, so I just wanted to have these statistics. I've been studying this topic my whole life, so I just wanted to have these statistics fresh in my mind, and I'll probably review this later, or if anyone sees the debate and wants to check my channel afterwards, that they will be able to be referred to my channel and see these statistics if they were wondering what I was talking about. So here is the Pew Survey 2015, religion and scientists. Highly religious Americans are less likely than others to see conflict between faith and science. So we're looking at the conflict. And actually, I went to University of Michigan, and the conflict theory of science and religion largely comes from University of Michigan. The president of University of Michigan, White, who had originally designed, if you research like the stories of Galileo and the Pope, they're largely friendly. Like the actual annals, it's likely that the Galileo and the church were much more friendly, and it looks like the house arrest. Galileo was basically on a stipend from the church his whole life, and even after the so to say house arrest, he would still get in pretty good circumstance to continue doing research for the church. And even the Pope, who grew up, was a childhood friend of Galileo. And then you see like the Gregorian calendar, the next pope after Galileo is Pope Gregor, and he ends up changing the calendar and adopting much of the wisdom that Galileo had came up with, without but about 100 years ago, history was rewritten and said, because generally science was a branch of theology. Historically, in the universities, you had the theological department, in science, physics, cosmology, any of these subjects, medicine, were like a branch of the theology department, and it was all sponsored by the church. All like schools in Europe were basically church schools, and even Darwin in his theory, the name of his original paper includes like for the glorification of God, and Darwin claims that his intention was to glorify God and the power of God and the beauty of creation through his work. And so it's important to keep this in note that this modern theory that there was a conflict between the church and scientists and religion was probably inaccurate in this historical revisionism of the last 100 years. So here's Pew data, very well researched. I quote them often, very well funded and researched. Most Americans say science and religion conflict, but fewer say their own beliefs conflict with science. So 59% think that science is in conflict with religion, but only 30% think that their religion conflicts with science, which is like the question where like 90% of people think that they're above average drivers, which can't be the case. So most people think that there's some sort of conflict between science, religion, but not their religion. But it's not hugely overwhelming. 38% of Americans believe that there is no conflict between science and religion. And personally, I consider myself a religious scientist, and I take a scientific view towards religion. And hopefully I'm going to start streaming on Freemasonry, which I sometimes refer to Freemasonry as the science of monotheism. And the less religiously observant a person is, the more likely they are to say science and religion conflict. Those who seldom or never attend services, 73% say that there's a conflict. Okay, Shalom. Let me see if content wants to join in and walk through some of these statistics with me. You want to join me, content? I'll see if someone wants to come in and help me talk through these statistics. Yeah, I'm willing to talk to myself because basically this is debate prep, but having someone else in the conversation would certainly help be of a benefit probably to the audience, because when I'm in the screen share I can't okay, but I'm going to keep on going through. These statistics are very useful, and as I want to have them on the top of my head when I talk tomorrow. So most unaffiliated say religion and science often conflict, but few say personal beliefs conflict with science. So even the people that say there's a conflict, they don't think that there's their personal beliefs. So maybe the person's an atheist in their lifestyle. Like they say, even though they don't believe in God, like, oh, the church, the scripture conflicts with science, but how I personally live my life and believe, that doesn't conflict with science, which is almost certainly untrue. If you ask a person about their belief system, maybe me and JF will get into tomorrow about the basis of morality or law or legalities or utilitarianism, so to say, that in reality most people's belief systems do conflict with science also. It's not just religion that conflicts with science. Percentage of adults who say church should express their views should keep out of public policy on scientific issue, about half. Should the church, religious people just butt out, or should they make a point like I'm making? Evolution is false theory. It creates degeneracy, yada yada yada. So that's about evenly split up in America. Differences by frequency of church attendance occur on evolution, animal research, and genetic modification. So we see those who attend church seldom or never are more likely to say humans evolved due to natural processes, oppose animals in research, view that it's appropriate to modify genes to reduce a baby's risk of a disease, and view that it's appropriate to modify genes to increase a baby's intelligence. By comparison, those who attend church weekly or more are more likely to disagree that humans evolved over time to due to natural processes, to favor animals in research, because likely in the Bible, the world was created for man's benefit, and question using genes for solving diseases or increasing intelligence. I'm not sure why it doesn't have data on the others. And here you have, evangelical Protestants, mainland Protestants, and Catholics, which I showed in the other data that you could join, John, if you want to help me talk through this. If you're sitting there by your computer and you want to join in, you feel free to click on the link, or if you want, I'll have to email it to you if you're interested. I just want to have these ideas clear in my head going into tomorrow's debate. So evangelical Protestants are the most opposed to evolution and don't seem to think the growing world population is a problem. And although mainline Protestants and Catholics largely agree, things like offshore drilling, and environmental issues. So, like, is there global warming? Should we be concerned with the environment? For whatever reason, evangelical Protestants don't seem to worry too much about environmental factors, as where Catholics are more likely to think that we shouldn't harm the environment. Child vaccines should be up to parents to decide. Evangelical Protestants, President Trump, that was an issue. And all the other issues here are only of weak concern. Most Americans' personal religious beliefs do not conflict with science. So as we said, that 36% mentioned conflict over the creation of the universe, evolution, and Darwin. 24% mentioned broad difference over the belief of God, facts versus belief, miracles, view of man as in charge. 11% mentioned views about the beginning of life, abortion. 7% medical practices. The more secular a person is, the more unaffiliated person is, the more likely they are to think that there's a conflict. Of the net unaffiliated, 76% think that science and religion are often in direct conflict. Race, pretty equal. Blacks at a slightly higher likeliness to think that science and religion are in conflict. Although that number is decreasing, interesting that as time is progressing, there's less of a tendency, not a huge decrease, but less of a tendency to believe in conflict between religion and science. And that's mostly among the religion, the unaffiliated holding to their beliefs. But the general population, the religiously affiliated, are more so thinking that there's no conflict between religion and science. And the personal religious belief, people are much less likely to believe, say, okay, the church, their doctrine is in conflict, but the way I see it doesn't conflict. Creation of the universe. Percentage of those who say science conflicts with their own religious belief. %, conflict over creation of the universe, evolution, Darwin, Big Bang. 24% net general conflict, things belief in God, Bible, fact versus belief, God in charge versus man in charge, conflict over immaculate conception, miracles. 11% conflict over the beginning of life, 7% conflict over specific medical scientific practices, and a small percentage, afterlife, euthanasia, right to die, global warming, climate change, gays, homosexual, school teaching, news media. There probably could be more research in that. White evangelicals and black Protestants are more likely to say the church should be involved. So, those are your main white evangelicals, largely, the Republican base of the Trump coalition, and much more likely to say that the church and religious belief should have a factor in politics, and the blacks less so. But even though, and even white mainline Protestants, majority think that religion should play a role in politics and scientific debate, as where Catholics are slightly bent the other way, wanting to separate the two, and obviously the unaffiliated, much less so. And interesting here that blacks are more likely to say that beliefs, 8% more likely to want the beliefs of the church voiced about science. Evolution existed, always, or evolved. So huge differences between like white evangelical and white mainline Protestant, almost the flip side. Evangelical, 60%, we existed always. White mainline Protestant, evolved. Black Protestant, about even. Catholics, majority, evolved, although Hispanic Catholics are more likely to reject evolution, but still majority hold of it. And whites are the most likely to believe in evolution. Blacks are the most likely to reject evolution. Here's the question about natural processes. So there's different levels of belief in evolution, where we talk about just is natural selection mechanisms true, or is the whole thing of evolution that we started from your primordial elements and came into single cell organisms, eventually to algae and protozoa, to plant life, to animals, to humans, to just accepting the mechanisms of evolution. So humans evolved over time. You got a majority, 65%, but 25% think that it was guided by a supreme being, which does not coincide with the evolution the way it's taught in universities or accepted as a scientific theory. Only 35% think that it came from, and that was on the first slide. And then they have it divided, so of the white evangelicals that believe in evolution, only 12% of those believe due to natural processes, and the majority who believe in evolution think it's supreme guided. And Catholics, the majority, net Catholic, about evenly split between those who think it was natural processes or guided. And racially, so all interesting statistics. It's good to view this over. And I've looked at this survey before. This survey is good, like 3-4 years old, and I remember reading it when it came out. But this is still probably the best data on the issue currently. Maybe in another few years they'll do another survey. But as of now, this is probably still the best statistics out there. And obviously, we had what people think about scientists versus actual scientists. We had like 98% of scientists actually support evolution, but most people think that that's much lower. In the U.S., only 66% of people think that 66 people believe only 66% of scientists believe in evolution, when in reality 98% of scientists believe in evolution, which is an interesting phenomenon. So percent of U.S. adults who say scientists generally believe the universe was created in a single violent event, that scientists are divided in their views about how the universe was created. So scientists obviously haven't figured out, you have the Big Bang and different theories of how the creation, and that there's more division among scientists than evolution itself, like on the Big Bang. And but the public thinks that scientists are more divided than they actually are. Genetic modification to increase intelligence takes advances too far. 83% of the US public is concerned about genetic modifications. And among the religious, it's higher. Net unaffiliated, still 74% of people are concerned about, but the numbers, 25% are for. So interesting issue. And even JF himself is mentioned concerned about genetic modifications. Reducing disease risk, it's about a half-half split. Should you use genes to help reduce the risk of disease? And that's in the U.S. public, it's pretty even split. No huge outliers among the religion. Slightly, even most religious people are more willing to accept the use of genetic modification to prevent disease. Bioengineering to create artificial organs for transplant. Majority of the U.S. agrees with it. No huge outliers in the religion. Majority of blacks oppose access to experimental drugs before being fully tested. So that's one of the main outliers on this, that blacks don't want to be experimented on drugs with experimental drugs, which is slightly in the US, generally people favor that by a little bit, except blacks being the outlier. Child vaccines should be required. Big issue. 2/3 of America say yes, 1/3 no. President Trump, stood out on, possibly was one of the issues that helped him win the Republican nomination, was being skeptical about vaccines. And even white evangelical Protestants generally favor requiring, but 39%. But it is an issue. You see, like Jehovah's Witness obviously reject it completely. Some ultra-Orthodox Jews or Hindus or different people want to reject it. So interesting practical outcome, political debate that comes up pretty often. GMOs or genetically modified foods unsafe. Majority of Americans slightly are concerned about genetically modified foods. Even scientists are not clear on the health effects of genetically modified foods. So that issue will keep on coming up. Pesticides, generally people are against it. Interesting, blacks are the most against it. Animals in scientific research, about 50-50 split. No huge outliers among any of the religious beliefs. Global warming, big issue. Man's effect on the climate. And it's interesting that religion has a little bit of a factor to play in whether people believe that. I know that Tuvia Singer, I think Tuvia, someone wrote a book on people supporting Israel, and he actually said among Americans, the biggest determinant of whether people support Israel is whether they reject global warming. That was the biggest correlation of any issue. But human activity, natural patterns. So 50% of people think that the climate is rising according to human activity. Hispanic Catholics are actually the highest on all of it, that think that it's human activity that is causing it. If there's a star on that, if it gives some sort of reason why Hispanics are so high on that. White evangelicals are the least likely of anyone to believe that human activity is causing causing global warming or environmental damage, like offshore drilling, oil manufacture. These issues were a big factor in such as the election of Donald Trump. Here's your scientific agreement about the man's effect on global warming has been increasing. For a period, it looks like it fell off and then it regained. Minor and interesting. Survey data is always interesting. Perception of scientific agreement. Interesting. The Hispanic outlier again. Offshore drilling. Opposed favor. The white evangelical Protestants, most likely whites, more likely to favor. There's some evidence to say that actually whites are the users of the majority of the world's energy. So it might be that we're in terms of whites being the main beneficiary of having mass amounts of energy, are more likely to favor the sources of getting it. Nuclear power. Favor opposed building nuclear power plants. In the U.S., generally split with a slight majority for opposing it. Blacks are the most opposed to nuclear energy. Interesting. Genetically engineered plant fuel to replace gasoline. 68 for, 26 against, no huge outliers. Fracking, slight majority oppose. Protestants, more likely to be in favor. Whites and interesting, blacks also favor fracking more than the general public. Problem of global population. So 60%, 59% of people are worried about population, 38% no big deal. The more religious people are, the less likely they're worry that God tells us to be fruitful, multiply. God will come up with a way. And interesting that the blacks are the least likely to worry about the effect of population growth. Space station has been good. Investment, 64% yes, no big outliers. Human astronauts, no big outliers. Investment in science and engineering. So U.S. adults, 71% think basic science research pays off. In engineering and technology, slightly higher, 72. No huge outliers among the different religious groups. There's some small differences. Hispanic Catholics, interesting, are the highest in favor of science research. Government funding. So I mainly want to prepare talking about evolution. So okay, thanks for tuning in. I haven't, I'm not sure if you want to talk a few minutes, Brundle, or anyone wants to talk a few minutes. I presented the statistics that I wanted to have clear in my head. I bought a lot of books. I got, Leibniz on history of atheism. But, Leibniz obviously is one of the founders of calculus, and he argued with Newton. And it's interesting that he's in defense of spirituality, and he's worried about Newtonian theories and mechanical understandings increasing atheism, which is interesting. And I'm trying to get the origins of atheism down. I'm probably not going to have that down for tomorrow. And there's a lot of different directions that debate could go. So let me see if Brundle wants to come on, and I'll wait and see if he wants to talk a few minutes. I'll keep it going. It's hard for me to, I've been on 45 minutes, so it's hard to talk straight. I did a lot of research for last week when I knew I was going to come on, and I saw the debate between Richard Dawkins and Deepak Chopra. I'll put this in the. So I would picture my debate with JF to be more like this. People are maybe more used to me talking about religion or different topics. But I think it's unlikely Judaism will come up at all in the debate for evolution. I'm more likely to mention scientists, philosophers, Aristotle,
Can you hear me?
than anything Jewish, and it'll probably be closer, my arguments, to Deepak Chopra. Although I did see Richard Dawkins debated the chief rabbi
David.
Jonathan Sachs, who retired recently.
David.
Evolution. I mean, on science and religion, not on evolution. So there might be some element to it. And I would like to
David.
continue in these discussions. I always wanted to host these debates at universities because in universities is Brundle on?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I just
okay.
in my headphone. I was just talking into the mic without my headphone.
All good. Is my volume okay?
I hear someone say, can everyone hear Brundle? There's only like 3 people watching, so I'm assuming if I could hear you, they should be able to hear you.
Which data did you go through?
I went through Pew survey on
Is it evolution in the description?
Yeah, I posted them, and so just to fact check about various beliefs on evolution. And I made the point before that the one thing, there's a discrepancy between like what percentage of scientists do you think believe in evolution?
Oh, yeah, I heard that. I mean, I don't know. The idea of 67% is funny. People underestimate the scientific consensus.
Yeah, it's like 98% of scientists have a consensus belief on evolution. Oh, then there's of the American public, only 1/3 of Americans believe in evolution due to natural processes. And 2/3 believe in evolution, but of those who believe in evolution, about half of them think that it was guided by God. And it's actually white Protestants that reject evolution more than anybody. Like 2/3 of white Protestants believe that man was created in its present form.
Is that evangelicals or is that mainline too? I think I'm looking at that. So mainline Protestants.
That's a huge difference between mainline and evangelical. So mainline are more likely to believe in evolution than evangelicals, but still the whites are the most likely to reject it than others, which is interesting. If you listen to his talk about like the ethno-state and saying that he's more likely to live the way he likes to live among his fellow whites. What about the fact that and I showed the world data because it was interesting to show that atheism is largely a Western phenomenon. If you knew that, like in France, like half of the French population is atheist, and obviously France is the birth of atheism. Like with Napoleon in the Napoleonic era and Enlightenment, took birth in France. And so, JF coming from that school, but like in India, Turkey, China, like 80% of people are believers plus. And it's only when you get into the West, and even among scientists, that most, I don't know when the last time you were in university and if you spoke to like your foreign students, but they're much more likely to reject evolution, to be believers, to believe in a religion than Westerners.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the flaws of Westerners, isn't it? I don't like secularism is such a problem.
I thought, I mean, I'm not sure how we, if we're just going to talk an hour or, maybe we'll end up going for like 3 hours. And there's a few.
I've got maybe like an hour. I don't have 3 hours, but yeah.
I was saying last night that like him and CV was scheduled for an hour, but went like 3 hours, 20 minutes.
Yeah. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean,
you watched it, right?
I watched it in 2-speed, and he's a good debater, or she, whatever, but he wasn't so organized or structured like JF, and just bouncing all over, or more like rhetorical tricks as opposed to just dealing with the facts. But I think it was actually pretty equal, pretty even.
No, I mean,
it's interesting because they're both evolutionists.
CV is definitely a dishonest fellow. I mean, it's funny, like the PhD in rhetoric that he's pursuing might as well be a PhD in sophistry.
Yeah, but saying he's intellectual and he had done some research and he did have a minor grasp of evolution. It was interesting. I was thinking that, JF kept on quoting Rosenberg, and I was like, Rosenberg, he's almost definitely a Jew.
Almost.
Well, no, I mean, saying that, obviously not all Rosenbergs are Jews. Like the famous Nazi senior politician was Rosenberg also. But
that's a patrilineal. That's probably all that is.
If it's scientific, I mean, Rosenberg's a Jewish name. It's not, but I mean, Rosenberg's a German name, not a Jewish name. But most Rosenbergs in America are Jews, and presuming if it's a scientist on a biological study, and I would actually use the Jewish people as a proof of God. We probably won't talk about it, tomorrow, but like the mystery, the success of the Jewish people, and like the JQ is almost a proof that the Bible's true. That that how do you explain the power of the Jewish people other than the Bible? We're like subversiveness or nepotism or whatever method. I might mention that I would like to cover the connection between degeneracy, decline of moral values in the West, sexual degeneracy, and evolution. I would like to cover the like standing on the shoulders of our predecessors who all believed in the soul. So for thousands and thousands of years, every single great thinker universally believed in the soul, and it's only in the last 200 years that you have the rise of atheism, and most of these questions science still hasn't answered, and just the kind of the fallacy to reject Aristotle and Newton and Leibniz and Galen and all the Hippocrates, everything that Western culture is based upon for this new theory of evolution, even though it hasn't really came close to explaining these phenomenon. And then maybe we could get into the more exact details of what's the source of consciousness in the soul, why it's more logical to believe that consciousness and cognition comes from the spirit as opposed to the physical. And if he wants to debate like generic evolution type things, like the missing gap for the the transition of species or different how like the eye or something where how do you develop eyesight where it takes the multiple like 5-6 different mechanisms that don't benefit each other, how an evolutionary mechanism could have produced these by mutation and mistake to produce these things that eventually are going to go together and perform something useful, even though by themselves they don't perform any useful function. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the basic arguments.
No, I know. It's like how do you like what's the biological advantage to the intermediate steps between like the fully finished organ and nothing?
Yeah, right? That's not my specialty, but that in terms of just the pure science of it, that's like those are the strongest arguments against the theory. Like saying it's just ridiculous. There's no way that happened. How did the eye evolve? It's just impossible that the eye evolved. How do you come from not having an eye to having an eye when it takes like 10 different structures and mechanisms that don't have any useful function until they all come together? That there's no way mutations mathematically, it's impossible.
Yeah.
That's not my specialty, but I mean, those are common arguments. If he wants to talk about those, like I'm happy to. And I'm not sure, like, if we're just going to, I'm not sure if I should like prepare, like how much I'm going to over prepare for it or something. I want to like write out like a whole series of arguments and, so I don't think I'm going to over prepare because I've been studying for this topic really my whole adult life. And like, that's one of the main reasons I didn't become a doctor was because of my, I just abhor evolution. Like I remember, taking the biology courses and anatomy in the medical school, and like I couldn't stand the whole demeanor and the degeneracy. It's interesting. University of Michigan, the anatomy course, it was this German professor, this woman, and she, she got up and she was like, I recommend all of you having sex with each other. Not necessarily like an orgy or something, but like experimenting with sexuality. It'll improve your understanding of anatomy and make you better doctors.
Well, Jewish?
No, no, German actually. From Germany. I'm saying like actual like a German professor that was at University of Michigan. She's probably been here for quite a while, but she had even like a strong German accent, and but that's pretty much the demeanor of degeneracy in medical schools. Like where the people are recommended to have forbidden relationships with each other, and it even said that you'll be a better doctor because of it. You'll understand anatomy better. You'll have a better feel and sense of touch with the human body, and be more considerate or compassionate. And it to me that goes along with evolutionary thinking, and even my father's a doctor, and I mean he's a good man. He's a serious man. He's spiritual, but he's kind of like he's not very compassionate. He's a little bit compassionate, but he's just kind of like take it like a man. Like the world's a tough place, and he's gotten more soft in his older years. Like he does funerals and hospice, and a lot of people are atheists, so they're not prepared for death, and they end up asking my dad to speak at their funerals because they didn't prepare for death. Some death happens, like should they get buried or cremated, and they don't, they haven't been to church in like 50 years. They can't even think of who's going to speak at their funeral. So the only person they could think of to speak at their funeral is their family doctor. And maybe you haven't thought about that or came across that yet.
It's wild.
Are your grandparents still alive?
Oh yeah, all four actually.
I mean, God bless, good for you. But saying like you're reaching that age that most likely in the next.
Yeah, no, because they're all in their mid-80s.
Yes,
so it's a matter of time.
Yeah, and then are they going to have funerals? Are they going to get buried? Is there going to be a preacher at the funeral? Do they already purchased their burial plot?
Yeah, probably.
If they're traditional,
I don't know if nobody's got cancer or anything, so it's like.
But if they're traditional, they might even have purchased their burial plot already. They know where they're going to be buried.
Yeah, I don't think they have yet.
They don't go to church every week.
Oh no, they do.
You might not have discussed it, with them, but they may or may not. But these are issues that are directly connected to evolution. Like what happens when you die? Do you have a soul? Does it matter? Do you just go to sleep forever? Is it really just utilitarianism that you act good and morally to people because if you don't do it, society would crumble? I'd like to give the karma argument. Evolution is degeneracy because it rejects that you can't sin and get away with it. That there's a creator, there's greater spiritual forces that takes into account the morals of the universe. And evolution is intrinsically rejecting that guiding spiritual principle. If nobody catches
evolution to me is bullshit. So you're not going to get an argument from me about it.
Yeah, I assume that you'd be on my side on this, and even I think the majority of JF's audience.
And even when we had that argument on Luke's show about it, I never rejected evolution. I just rejected you arguing for K-Mac's evolutionary theory.
Well, that's what you said last night, because like K-Mac's evolutionary theory like makes me look good because like really like I'm a loser. I can't get more than like 2-3 viewers on my show without I get you on that, you like triple my viewership. But like then all of a sudden these people are saying like, yeah, like we control everything and we're the most powerful people in the world. And like I go into synagogue and like no one, even my fellow Jews don't really like me. The fellow Jews on the stream like despise me. The only people on Twitter that have me blocked are my fellow Jews. But then here are these people.
Yeah, I think it's bullshit the rap you get from the Jews.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'll provide an audience that's not out there, and it's saying that I said for President Trump when he came out, because President Trump had like these ultra orthodox, I said the alt-right of the Jews, and why I considered myself alt-right is because it's like fake Jews and their fake news. It's like CNN, like Jake Tapper, Wolf Blitzer, probably a lot more. These are your Jews that represent Judaism. Alan Dershowitz, your big names that everybody's in their living room. Jake Tapper is the Jew in their living room. And it's saying like, no more of these fake Jews and their fake news. You want to hear the real news from the real Jews. And to some extent, that's the way I looked at like Halsey and Analytic or something, because they were able to be fake Jews and they're fake news because there was no competition. They're just, like Luke Ford or something, where it's just like
fake Jews and their fake news. I like that.
I said that hundreds of times during the election. That was kind of like my Trump claim that not only is it fake news, it's fake Jews, because you have people falsely representing Judaism, in the fake news.
Yeah.
Maybe I saw Luke Ford. Like, I remember I'd seen him in my stream for like 2 years going back, like his Torah talks. I popped on maybe the channel for like 30 seconds. I couldn't watch it because it sounded like, I don't know if content's still watching, but it sounded just like a bunch of like Christians talking about the Bible. And I didn't even appreciate that Luke Ford was a convert to Judaism. I thought he was just a Christian. And it was like alt-right Torah.
That's what I figured.
And
what was that? What was that sound effect?
Ew, I hit a wrong button on my phone.
That's what I figured.
and then Luke Ford started getting those huge like alt-right, like the SPLC hit list basically all came on his show. And that's when I actually watched the show, and he's a convert to Orthodox Judaism, and I got on the show. And I think now like his show kind of went back to how it was before. So even now he has like a lot of audience from the alt-right that came to his show because of the other people that were his guests. But it's kind of returned to how it was before, with kind of like boring Torah talk and like fake Jews.
What do you think about alt-righters that look up to Norvin as some ideal man, like some sort of Ubermensch? Does that seem credible to you? What is that? What's the psychology of that?
He's just fulfilling a void, saying the most hardline opinion. So it's like last night, okay, David's streaming on ADL statistics, so he puts a blog about Jewish blood rights or something, crazy like conspiracy theory. And I think he actually got a strike on that.
You got a strike last night?
I looked at the channel and it looked like it. It's like I had to click a button to see it. I'm a free speech.
Gone through 3 channels in like 3 months.
I'm a free speech guy. Like, I mean, that's even God. Like, okay, JFA is going to have like David Duke and Mark Collett. And when I put up those ADL articles, and I saw like, I showed you on, that CNN, Stephen King retweeted Mark Collett, and he's like, Nazi sympathizer, you retweeted a Nazi sympathizer. And then I looked at the ADL page, and like 2 or 3 of their articles were about the Collett. And I see he's the guest on JF tonight with David Duke.
Yeah, that's that might be hashtag too soon. It looks like Content Watcher is comparing Norvin to Jesus. Does that strike you as ironic? I mean, can anyone seriously think that?
No, I'm kidding. I mean, he's like blatantly discompassionate. Like, he doesn't care what happens to other people. And I'm not even so sure that he cares what happens to whites. I mean, you give him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm saying, what has he ever done for anybody? They're saying like, what poor people has he ever fed? What like dispossessed? I mean, he just speaks the most radical things on the streams, and that's why he's a good voice for it. I mean, he's not dumb. Like, I've debated him a few times. He makes some good points. He has some good logic, but I think people just want to hear the most extreme arguments. So when you got me up there and you want, you're not going to attack me like the full, like straight out 1488. So you want a voice that's going to say that. And he's that voice right now, at least in our circles.
Yeah.
It's like on Luke Ford or something like that. I don't know if you like, you got to like ban him in the chat or give him a timeout, because he's just going to, but reality is he's only saying what half the people are thinking. Like, God forbid, like Halsey or something, he's going to call him a fat, whatever. Get banned, but really like half the people who are watching the stream are probably thinking the same thing. They just didn't want to say it. And if you've trained yourself religiously, like, okay, I don't pick on people who are different. I don't really have enjoyment of making people feel bad. There could be little blood sports or teasing, but you're like, nah, I mean, that's not cool to tease people like that. But like in general culture, that probably is popular.
Yeah.
And his scholarship, I don't think he's like producing great scholarship or anything like that. Like, I don't picture even his friend Marshall or whatever, that he didn't seem to have such great scholarship.
Yeah, I mean, I will say they definitely have great hair, the two of them. I mean, Norvin's got that giant fro, and then Marshall has that great like 1920s like split down the middle.
I mean, Patrick Little, for example, he had a high IQ. Like he read and knew some books pretty well. And like it's funny, I watched an interview and he was like, I read a 500-page book every week. And he might, but it's like I read a 500-page book like every other day.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm like 3 to 5 times the scholar he is, and maybe I have the luxury to whatever do it or whatever reason. But you're saying so Patrick Little had some scholarship, and I probably read half of the books that he read. Like I showed that Synagogue of Satan and Culture Critique, and so Patrick Little maybe read 10, 20 books really well. Norvin probably read 5 books pretty well. He talks about William Pierce, maybe David Duke. And he probably didn't even read Culture of Critique, but he's read a few books reasonably well. And I don't know how scholarly JF, if it's just evolution that he knows really well. Tried to watch today, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like he's not generically knowledgeable, where you could mention like World War II personalities or politic personality or even like American pop culture, and you're just like, who's that? Like Frame Games was like Saul Alinsky, and JF was like, never heard of him.
Well, JF's never heard of. Well, I guess because his background as a biologist, and
he's Canadian. I mean, just like he's Canadian. Why would he have heard of him? But I think a lot of people who follow politics would have heard of Saul. Even Europeans or whatever would have heard of Saul Alinsky. But I think he has areas of expertise as opposed to generic knowledge. And probably like Luke Ford, he's probably read 50 books pretty well. Like he knows like some of the IQ statistics or a few things pretty well. But I'm not sure about like his overall scholarship level, where it's just what he talks about he knows pretty well, and what he doesn't know he tries to avoid talking about. But he's got certainly a bigger knowledge base than a lot of other people with the streams. But I mean, he's not a PhD level scholar in anything, as opposed to JF, who actually has written, published, almost 10 scientific papers in recognized journals about biological topics.
Yeah. No, I agree. I just think this unironic like Norvin worshiping by people who are like full grown adults is just like I don't really know how to take it. Like,
well, JF disagreed when Luke Ford was on the show, and he said, Jared Taylor said, or Kevin McDonald, if you don't have an IQ over 120, you shouldn't talk about the JQ. And JF was just like, you're crazy. Like, saying, what the hell? You can't limit people talking about something who are below a certain IQ. Everybody has the right to think about and come to their own conclusions.
Well, I don't think it's about a question of right. It's more, I think Kevin McDonald's idea might have been like,
if you said that about race in general, you're saying unless you have a 120 IQ or higher, you shouldn't talk about racial politics in America, about like demographics of blacks and Hispanics or immigration. Like, I'm sorry, your IQ is under 120. You should not be voicing your opinion about the immigration issue.
Yeah,
and you're saying like, nah, man, like no one's gonna. That seems kind of like ridiculous.
Well, it's funny because I've always found that it's.
I don't know. The content's like he's like pushing Norvin right now, and when I'm saying like refute Norvin, I'm saying if Norvin's the guy who answered 11 on 11 of
Norvin is easy to refute in the sense that he's not that he sees the world in such black and white terms that it's like
he's got kind of like berate. I mean, he's not a scholar. I'm saying like refute just someone who he's like a basically
Norvin's IQ is about 108. That sounds like that sounds like Luke. Like Luke was throwing out some Episcopalian IQ statistics last night that came out of who knows where.
Yeah, I mean, I heard those arguments seem disingenuous. 'Cause, I mean, one thing, like Episcopalians, there's only like 1.5 million Episcopalians in the U.S. They're not a big group.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, Richard Spencer is an Episcopalian. I'm saying Episcopalians are the split off of the Anglican Church from like 150 years ago when the American Anglicans split off from the Church of England and formed the Episcopalians. There's not really that many Anglicans. I think there's less than 1 million Anglicans in the U.S., and there's like double the amount of Anglicans as there are Episcopalians. And I think the Episcopalians like took in like 200,000 African Americans in the last few years just because their numbers were falling off, like completely dwindling. And even in terms of like success and wealth, I saw like the Spencer family, for example, estimates that their family wealth is down to $150 million now. Like the British, one of the most famous British aristocratic royal families, now their all family wealth is total $150 million, which obviously is quite a bit of money. But you think like, the Episcopalians, like you have new Jews that have way more money than the Episcopalians are like a dying breed of aristocracy. And that might be part of the reason why they push liberalism so much.
Yeah. So Content Watcher says that like CV, I had made the argument to him. Some people were feeling like arguing with CV is pointless, that it's a distraction or not what we should be doing. I mean, my feeling is that being in an echo chamber is a bad idea.
CV probably knows evolution better than I do. So I mean, that's his subject matter. That's probably what he wants to talk about. He wanted someone who could propose. It's what I said, like appearing on your channel, where I want to test my ideas with the people who oppose them the most. And so JF wants to stand up against the people who say there's no such thing as race, there's no such thing as gender. And so, she might be a good target for his debate to come on and argue that point that he wants to refute.
Yeah, but no question. But the point about like that no one pays the respect to Norvin, I think Norvin has been on to disagree. The first time I ever talked to Norvin, I refuted his, I guess you could call it his tone or his approach. I've never.
He hasn't done anything to earn respect. And I'm saying, okay, you give him a little respect. And saying refuting somebody's true thing. There's like a school of thought, like you're going to refute Judaism, like you're going to refute evolution, you're going to refute, something that has Islam. Like you're not going to refute Islam. There's 1.5 billion Muslims. So even if you defeat Claire in an argument or you came out on the better, like there's still going to be 1.5 billion Muslim people, and you're not going to defeat, those people are just representatives of bigger things, that even if you defeat them, they're still going to be there because they're still part of something bigger, and they'll research their arguments, or there's probably someone who represents that school that would actually defeat you. And even if I could, so to say, I don't plan on defeating JF. I'm just going to propose and try to say these arguments, but it's not like, oh, I'm going to defeat JF so greatly that the 98% of scientists across the United States that believe in evolution are all of a sudden going to say, you're right, Duvid, evolution's a false theory. And so, like, racism, you're going to defeat racism, 1488ers, like saying, like, if there's 1 million full 1488ers in America, you're going to defeat Norvin so badly that every single one of them repents and is like, no, you're right, we're wrong, we're dropping the 88 and we're just 14 for now. You're saying it's not going to that's not how rhetoric, debate, politics works. You can make a dent in it.
Well, I mean, are you saying that you can't influence anybody's opinions?
You can influence, I'm saying, it's like President Trump or something, or the elections, demographics. That's why I show the statistics. Like, so people who think that there's a conflict between religion and science is decreasing, and the numbers changed over like the last 5 years, like 5%, where 5% less people thought that there's a conflict between science and religion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and over the U.S., that might be 15, 20 million people. So, I mean, you could have an effect on things, but I'm not sure about like defeating and people don't really go away. I mean, so what you expect. I saw it a few times, like in Jewish circles or something, like you're gonna convert to Islam or something. And in reality, a lot of these white nationalist alt right people are former liberals. So in some ways, like President Trump, Bannon, the rise of the alt right had an effect that converted your disenfranchised white Democrats and liberals into right wingers. And so, yeah, I mean, you can have an effect like that, but it's slow, gradual percentage change over long periods of time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like your wife or something like that. Like, have you influenced or changed your wife's thought at all over 5 years? You're saying like maybe not, and maybe you've even caused her to, feel her liberal beliefs even stronger than before.
Well, I have in that,
even though you may have defeated her in individual
arguments that I've struck.
I mean, you may defeat her all the time in arguments, and she's like, "I don't have the correct refutation, but I know you're wrong." So I mean, it could be like the majority of the time you argue that anyone scoring the debate would say you won the debate, but in terms like, did you win the war, or did you move her more to the right?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
No question.
Someone's like CV, what she was saying in CV's like mixed race.
The point is not. The point is not to. The point is not.
It's like a Jew.
The point is not to convince CV. It's to convince the audience.
Well, and it's a selected audience also. So I mean, say like I'm supposed to
Well, the vast majority. It's
I'm gonna God forbid, like okay, like we're gonna convert en masse to Christianity. Like you're right, Judaism's not a good religion. God forbid. It was wrong of me to try to defend and hold on to my customs, and now we're gonna en masse convert to Christianity. Do you really expect that to happen?
No, it's.
And like CV is already
the point is not to tell Tranny to put a suit on instead of a dress. The point is that there are at any given time people watching that are not that have not gone the full Norvin, so to speak. Okay. And they may have differing opinions on different issues. I mean, there's homosexuals in the alt-right. So they would sort of be implicitly okay with sexual degeneracy. I
was watching, was it Big Cat Kayla was on some other stream, and like everybody was an avatar and had these weird names. And I'm thinking like Norvin, he's like a cartoon character almost to some extent because even I said like you're just a meme. You're just a meme. You're just because you just created an internet character and you play the part. And if like you're trying to make a movie or something, most people aren't black and white. Most people have some gray area or dynamic people. But in terms of like movies and dramatics, you want to express a certain point, so you create certain like black and white characters in these internet chat rooms. People fall into these basically like cartoon characters where you want someone to come in and like that Mephistopheles' clip of Norvin's greatest hits, where it's basically just like 10 minutes of the most extreme racist rants that anyone could imagine. So if you imagine like, could you say the most racist things imaginable that like every PC censor would go crazy over? It's just 10 minutes straight of him saying that. And so it's like he's like a cartoon character, because there's no way in real life he's like that. He says he lives in like a majority black area. Like his his neighbors are all black. Like saying it's pretty unlikely that that's how he talks in real life. So he created like a cartoon character, and but it gets popular. Like to be a bad guy, like the people who rose to fame by playing bad guys in movies, something like that. And then there might be a certain element who side with the bad guy, and even like the people on the Luke Ford show, like like I said, like Luke Ford's kind of a racist basically. And might not like to use that term, and that you could say that's a misnomer to use the term. So like even Luke sides with Norvin over me. That's why he brought him in the third episode. He talked to Norvin for like an hour, and just like, oh, look at his beautiful blonde hair, or whatever. However, but I mean, people are going to side with their guy anyway. So Jews. because I'm only a half breed or whatever. Like Jews don't really want to get behind me, even if I'm arguing the arguments that they want to hear. And maybe people like Jakey Jake or a few people will come around like, yeah, actually, I think Duvid's saying good. Like I don't really like him, but I agree with what he's saying. And that's what you like. So you want someone like Norvin there. You need someone like Norvin there because you need someone to your right, to make yourself look reasonable.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely
because
true.
if you're in a general setting with people in the multicultural world, business, university, like frame games, diversity industry, you would be unreasonable. You would need to be censored. And so, people like, oh, man, this Brundlefly, like, that's why you're talking under an avatar. That's why you can't reveal your identity. Because what you're saying, to some extent, within like the PC world, the Overton window hasn't been shifted there. It's beyond the pale. So you need guys like Norvin out there to say, like, I'm beyond the pale. Like, I'm reasonable. Most people think like Norvin does.
Oh, this is all true. I mean, like,
and that's why I show the ADL statistics. Like, do really most people think like Norvin does? You're like the 11 out of 11, 25 million Americans had 6 or more on the ADL survey. I don't know what percent answered, like 11 out of 11. It's probably like 1% or 2% of the American population. Maybe 3 to 5 million people answered 11 out of 11 on that. Yeah. So you're thinking like, I'm not that bad. I only answered 4 out of 11. There's like 50 million Americans that agree basically the same way on the JQ as I see it. And you think like Norvin, there's 2 to 5 million Americans who look at the JQ as strongly as he does.
Yeah.
And then, how can you fix the Overton window? And I spoke to that guy, John, offline a little bit. And you're just saying, like, how do you get by in university? How can you, just saying, like, I just want, if you like a butterfly flew away, she's like, I just want my, to selectively marry a white man and my kid to have light features and blue eyes. Is that much to ask for? And if you're in university, it was like, no, you're a racist unless you date a black man. You have to prove that you're not a racist by dating a black man. And any other thing, we're going to label you as a racist. Something like that, where the Overton window has been shifted so far to the left that it's unreasonable, and that identitarian movements on the right are sprouting up. And that's why we have to keep on having these conversations to get the middle ground.
Yeah.
We have to know, and the Maimonides says, follow the middle path. And the only way to know the middle path is to test the extremes. Because you could be, significantly bent to one side, not knowing, like your wife, maybe, for example, because she thinks like she's basically in the middle. And you're like, what do you mean? You're a left-wing fanatic. But compared to the people she knows, she's basically middle of the path, because she's bubbled herself off and doesn't know, like, you're the most right-wing extremist she could even possibly imagine.
Yeah. No,
so you have to.
I try. It's funny. I try to tell her. Yeah, and Jonathan Pohl says,
and that's Aristotle. Even I'm quoting from my mind.
I hear you. Yeah, the golden mean. No, I totally agree. I mean, this is actually the thing I was talking about this with Eke Lux. Like, the real problem in America is that we've been cut off from access to an actual right wing. The Republicans are essentially centrists. They're just, there's no vision. It's whatever there's status quo, all about the status quo. And I feel that if there was an actual right wing in America, like, we wouldn't sort of have this decay into just the extreme, we wouldn't have been pushed so far left. You wouldn't have,
you could tell you're being lied to also. Like I put in the chat that CNN video, Chris Cuomo and Steve King, lawmaker, I won't delete retweet of Nazi sympathizer. Chris Cuomo questions Representative Steve King about retweeting a message from a self-described Nazi sympathizer who has expressed admiration for Adolf Hitler. And that's JF Gesper tonight. That's Mark Collett.
Yeah.
And and so Steve King's like, well, I was retweeting the Breitbart article and it was just under him, but for a full like 18 minutes he's grilling him. He's like, will you denounce Mark Collett? You're like, I demand you would denounce Mark Collett. And Steve King was like, I'm not going to denounce it. I believe in free speech, even like whatever. And that's to some extent, people know they're being lied to. People know they're being censored. People know that they're purposely being forced into false ideas. And it's kind of, I'm looking at like evolution. I think evolution is part of that, where it's to me, it seems like some sort of conspiracy that 98% of scientists believe in evolution, even though only like less than half of the general public believes in it.
Yeah.
And that's why your channel, if you get monetized or whether you don't get monetized, has a big future because, or JF's channel could have a future because people want to have these conversations. They're being purposely forbidden from having these conversations.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I love being Jewish really, because like you only have the safety of having this conversation with a Jew there. So and I always love, like I would say, like I love being a Jew. There's good and bad sides to being a Jew, but like to the extent like you can't have these conversations without a Jew there, and like I like playing that role.
Yeah.
And even like Luke, it's saying like he's not Jewish enough to host these conversations. Like he's getting shut down, and then like Luke can't attack me at the same time, like punch right on Judaism or something like that, and host these type conversations at the same time. And that's why he's like ADL, stay in your lane, because he's like punching right on the Judaism thing.
Yeah. For the record, Content Watcher is accusing me of denouncing Steve King for not denouncing Mark Collett, for not denouncing Hitler, and that's just not true. Mark King handled that, or Steve King handled that really well. Chris Como is they're just so full of shit. It's just unbelievable.
I mean, that's CNN, fake news, and I said in they're fake Jews. That's what we're saying, fake news, and they're
fake Jews. I love fake Jews.
I don't even know if
oh my God, that's great.
If Jake Tapper is still on CNN, he was on ABC and he's switching around and all that stuff. But I'm saying like that's what people like. You don't get to hear voices like mine in the general news. You hear a lot of Jews, but they're usually like people like Jake Tapper or Wolf Blitzer, and they have like that they're not giving you Judaism in a legitimate way. They reject the sages. They don't believe in their own religion, but at the same time they're like the gatekeepers for anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
and then I think you're coming around to it eventually, because that's why I had to show you all that demographic data to be like, how come I'm alt-right, and saying I'm alt-right for the same reason you are, because I don't want Jake Tapper to be my representative. I don't want Charles Krautheimer.
Do you feel like he's going to get you thrown in an oven?
No, I don't look. I mean, I believe in more providence like that. But I'm saying, okay, he's left wing, but like right wing, I don't want Charles Krautheimer or whoever the Jewish neocons to be my representatives. I want some rabbi, like Rabbi Boteach or something. Is like the only rabbi anyone has ever seen on the news. And saying like, I don't want these people representing me. And it came like the evolution, like separation of religion, church, and state. You shouldn't have a rabbi talking on the news or public opinions, and you can't have public personalities that are Jews. But obviously I disagree, and that's when he's saying like, where does the fake news end? And okay, maybe now you have the internet, it's going to be decentralized. You don't need like one news station that's going to have a few million viewers unless they're interviewing a really important guest, and you could have lots of micro channels or thousands, tens of thousands of viewers, and you'd have to be talking to really important people in order to like someone's okay, what happens if JF gets like Elon Musk to talk to his show, and then like maybe like Jeff Bezos or something. I don't know if those people actually are so hate fake news in the mainstream media, they could just buy their own news network. It was like when WWF Vince McMahon almost bought pay-per-view because WWF was the biggest thing on pay-per-view, and he was having disputes with them, or like Ticketmaster or something, where like WWF could have just like, instead of having these disputes with Ticketmaster or pay-per-view, he's just going to buy the whole thing. So at that point, like someone like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or any of these people, they could just buy their own media conglomerate, and some of that's what he did with the Washington Post. Although he's more like liberal, he's punching right mostly. And who knows what Elon Musk really feels. But yeah, I mean, Elon Musk could do like Bezos, and he could just buy like the Washington Post. He could buy like an internet channel. He could buy a TV station. As opposed to you, who has to build it up from scratch, or maybe someone like JF who's trying to build it up, and he needs like good guests. And it's like, yeah, he's not going to get Deepak Chopra on his show. I agree. Deepak Chopra could make every single argument I'm going to make probably better than me, but he's a multimillionaire. He speaks in front of crowds. He's not going on JF's show.
True.
Even Richard Spencer, like, if he didn't have his decline, he's only on your show because he's trying to come back from defeat.
Well, and I had his phone number. He didn't really feel like going through the hassle of going down to Verizon and changing his number.
Well, he could have refused. I mean, he didn't have to come on your channel for 2 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours. I mean, saying that, and then saying like, yeah, I was looking like Al Jazeera, like he's got like 1 million views, like he's got stuff on the YouTube with 1 million views, and saying he wasn't necessarily defeated fair and square. Like, I mean, that's what I'm saying, like Mark Collett or something. I believe in the open arena of ideas. I want to defeat him fair and square, and saying like Richard Spencer was defeated by underhand tactics, and he wasn't legitimately fair and squarely defeated in the arena of ideas. In my, like, I respect my ideas and my research, and I would like to see him defeated in the open arena of ideas than to resort to underhand diversity industry tactics to take him down.
Yeah.
And, content says, why are Jews so willing to shut down speech? Because they're scared, and it's like really it was like blacks in minorities. They were scared, just saying like, look what's happening right now with deportations, and people. There's 10 million Hispanic illegal immigrants in America now. They say, whatever the statistics, if they're there and they know that someone starts saying these ideas, and someone gets up there and saying we got to deport the illegal immigrants, they don't want to be deported. They have no choice but to resort to underhand tactics to stop it. And I don't know if it's life and death for them. It may be life and death in some of those circumstances. Like, they're going to get deported and they're going to go back, and God forbid they're going to be killed, or the life is going to be crappy. And it's better for them to do any means necessary to stop it. And if you're a black in America and you're like, who are these white nationalists? They're trying to kick us out of our country. I don't even want to give them the platform. And saying, really, Richard Spencer was taken down by people who were willing to suffer arrest. Saying there were 20 plus people that got arrested to shut him down. It wasn't just like the diversity industry and ADL stuff. There were 20 people who put their body on the line and went to prison to shut him down. Right?
Yeah.
So it has to, and you say like, yeah, say if you're a Jew, like you saw those ADL statistics, I saw content was saying, like imagine the mind of paranoia of the person that actually collects this data. But there's that mind of paranoia because people reject the Holocaust. People know one of the biggest, most significant events in all of Jewish history, the Holocaust, happened in our lifetimes. We know old timers that went through it, and then someone like puts a swastika on your local Jewish institute, and people start getting scared. You're like, oh shit, society's going to turn on us and throw us into the ovens. And then you look on like my chat, even like people are joking about it in the chat rooms and openly, and people are scared. That's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, there might, Frame mentions like the diversity industry. Yeah, some people are making money off of it, and I see that from myself in Jewish circles. Like the big wig, the money people come in and take over the events or profit off of it, or try to get you to vote for their people, or try to get, but like generally they're just playing off of the fear of people, and to some extent the fear is legitimate. And saying that you're feeling it now, that fear as a white man, you're starting to feel that fear, that relatively minority is saying that fear that you're just starting to feel, that's how I felt every day of my life.
Allegedly.
Well, yeah, but I was saying that that's the argument that they would give. Like if you're a black man or something in America, or maybe even a Jew or some sort of minority, and saying you're just starting to feel the way I felt every day of my life.
Yeah.
So, but it's saying, okay, you got to have the argument in the open, you got to have open arena of ideas to have these arguments, or it's just going to become more and more fractured. America is going to keep on declining. Education will keep on declining. Racial tensions and violence will keep on declining. Political gridlock, the swamp gets worse and worse. President Trump, he hasn't been able to drain the swamp.
Yeah, he hasn't.
I don't know, is Jake coming on, or you want to call it a day?
I'm done.
Yeah, I really wanted to prepare for. I'm going to do more preparation, because I want to, certainly, you put me in front of Luke. Maybe had like 200 people. You put me in Spencer for just a minute. There were 400 people. JF will certainly be the biggest crowd I've ever spoke to. So I want to have my.
Yeah, dude, it's like a packed auditorium.
Yeah, and
even when you think, that's just live. Like, remember, 18,000 people have watched the Spencer video. JF regularly hits 15,000 on his videos.
Yeah, so I wanted to have this data.
It's like an arena.
If anyone does take me seriously, or maybe it'll give me the benefit of the doubt, saying like, okay, it's tough to have everything on the tip of your tongue, and like, thank God. I don't really believe in IQ. Really, I'm more a soul type person. I've said you could, but like usually I'm pretty high IQ like that, and I have a good ability for recall for my ideas. And if it, it's like utilitarianism, Locke, Aristotle, Lagrange, Leibniz, or something, like I want to have a instant recall, so that the best idea, what I need to say, is on the tip of my tongue. And you could have a little forgiveness for people to be like, okay, like you can't remember everything accurately on the spot, especially in a long-term debate. But that's why I wanted to have some of the stuff on my YouTube page, so that people check my YouTube page. They'll be able to add a little bit of credibility to saying like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, even if whatever happens tomorrow night. And I think JF is more play it by ear also. Like, it doesn't look like he wants me to do like a PowerPoint presentation. And I would have even given my arguments in advance, because these arguments are pretty generic. Like, I'm not going to be saying anything. I'm not going to be like breaking news or have like groundbreaking new theories, the anti-evolution that no one's ever thought about before. So I would have even given him my arguments in advance and made like a chart so people could follow it. But that's not the way he does things.
Yeah.
And that's probably less interesting to the generic public.
Yeah. I think you're going to do just fine, dude. You've been doing this. You've had hundreds of hours now.
Yeah. These are things I've been arguing about for 20 years. Like, I've spent thousands of hours studying these topics. Like I have like 100 books on my shelf on these subjects. And, I don't think JF's trying to destroy me either. I think it was like CV. He was pretty nice to it, and because he wanted someone to argue that topic with, and I think, he realizes that we have the current state of science. But I was talking about like cognition.
Am I here?
Are you, Jake?
Flaky.
Flaky. I'm actually on. No, because this is.
I don't think he's not going to like completely destroy me with like saying like, oh, but you don't know the most latest research. It's saying like, I know the most latest research, and I still reject it. And he knows that evolution, the most latest scientific research, does not show the hard problem of cognition, the hard problem of consciousness, is a legitimate thing that every biologist recognizes.
Dude, is the actual topic like set up? Like, is it you and your creationism and like anti-evolution versus his atheism and pro-evolution? Like, is that actually the name of it? So that is the topic. Okay.
Well, I don't think he's set up. I messaged him today about it, and he said, "Yeah, we'll be talking evolution." I'm not sure how he's going to talk about it, and there's a different.
I think my feeling is, well, so what it looks like to me, what's going to happen is,
I think he'll also pay like super chats. Like if we're getting a bunch of super chats, he might go for 3 hours. If we don't get any super chats, he might end it at an hour.
Well, it looks like, I don't know, did he have Lauren Rose on yesterday and then went to Halsey and CV at 8 o'clock?
I think he went straight, Halsey and CV. I don't think he had. I think he's only doing Lauren Rose like Sunday once a week. And he had a lot of super chats like yesterday. Like I think he made like maybe even like close to $1,000 last night.
Yeah. So look,
as compared to as compared to today with
JF likes
Ryan
to
Dawson.
Laugh. JF likes to laugh.
Dude, one thing you should ask him, by the way, is like ask him if he was an atheist before he went into like studying biology or studying genetics. Because most of the people who I meet in life, they're not atheists because of like some scientific thing they discovered. They're usually atheists for like Christopher Hitchens types of reasons.
I think he discussed that. Like, he's probably Catholic. Because Quebec was a Catholic providence. Cardinal Rucloy, if you know your European history, in like the 1600s, set up Quebec as you had to be Catholic to live there. And it's actually interesting because Jews go back in Quebec like 250 years. So the Jews sided with the British in when the British conquered Quebec. There were Jewish people in the military. Even one of like the generals that defeated Quebec for the British Army was a Jew.
But so like what I mean is that like JF doesn't believe, he's not an atheist for like Christopher Hitchens reasons or anti-religious authority. Like he's really hardcore because of just what he's studied in university, and he believes in evolution so hard. That's his.
I put the statistics. His parents were probably secular Catholics.
Okay.
Like most French people, like secular Catholics. And he mentioned, I forget which stream where he was talking, like he wants to find like a Catholic girl because he admitted that like that he wants, like, in order to build a family and get married, that it's easier to have a religious.
He said actually, I think in one of his streams, something like, my girlfriend is like, she's not religious, but she acts like a religious person or something. So he wants to have the best of both worlds, I guess.
Really, that'd be part of my arguments on evolution against him, is like, how do you expect to have a monogamous relationship? Do you care if your wife cheats on you? Do you care if your wife, God forbid, in saying like, if from an evolutionary standard, does he want his wife to be a fellow evolutionist? And if his wife's a fellow evolutionist, what's the chance that she's going to remain faithful in the marriage?
Yeah, right. That is a good one to hit on. Have you like written down points yet, like that you're going to bring up? Is that one of them?
I might make notes, but I've been, as I said, like I've been studying this topic for 20. Rabbi Gottlieb, you were.
Yeah, I did. I had classes with him.
Yeah, I was 18 years old, like over 20 years ago, and I was taught evolution in high school and largely believed in it. A secular Jew, and David Gottlieb and Orson Mack like pounded away about the logical fallacies in evolution. So like over 20 years, I've been studying this topic.
Yeah, I could tell. No, you seem like this is like a perfect matchup, this debate. But also, the other thing is that, and I know I mentioned psychiatry in a bunch of streams on Luke and on my channel and stuff. JF did a very long anti-psychiatry stream like a long time ago on his old channel, he said, and he got rid of it. And then I went on his show and he agreed with those points. And he said to me in the chat the other day that he would do another show. But I think you could kind of point out another inconsistency is that if he's anti-psychiatry, like that is not the atheist position. Like psychiatry and like drugs and no free will and that kind of thing is like very tied in with atheism. So if you want to prod that,
he's gonna say he doesn't have to subscribe to everything other atheists subscribe to.
Yeah, that's true. But it is a little, because like what's his background? Like he's a neurology person or a neuroscientist or something like that. And is David here now? Is it just me and you, dude?
No, he's here. I'm sure he's here.
Okay. No, I just really, this to me is like going to be one of the better debates on these things, because it's like it's going to be serious and it's going to be about God and all that. So
he's a published scientist. In
I mean, I've been working on
it's on his webpage.
I've been trying to get Duvid onto JF for 3 months now.
yeah, but that's because okay.
I'm going to be
It
arguing.
wasn't for this.
Logic.
It wasn't for these reasons.
I'm going to
What
be
do you
arguing
mean?
pure logic, and there's other people. Like, I don't want to get too much into the minutia of. We might argue a little bit like of why evolution is a false theory, why it's statistically unlikely or impossible that species could have changed from species, or like the existence of the eye is probably the most famous example, that there's no working mechanism for how the eye came into being. And there's a few theories, but larger body systems that have so many different parts.
Are you going to ask him about free will? His opinions on free will?
We'll see how it goes, and I think he might direct it somewhat based off of the super chats, because he has a profit-seeking venture. So.
Yeah. But I said in the chat like a minute ago that like the atheists have the frame. Like when I'm like, I don't know if you watch The Big Bang Theory or this, understand the culture of it, but like most people that are like a little bit high IQ, if you start mentioning God, like at least in my generation, often they'll be like, "Oh, you believe in the flying spaghetti monster?" Like there are a lot of snickering, weak people and stuff like that. So do you think, Dewey, that like our view is the major minority? Yeah.
Well, you didn't see the statistics I posted. I made a big point of going through the statistics. I think actually half of his audience will probably agree with me on a lot of these issues.
Yeah, they should. Because most of the people that are like, where do you think conservative values come from? They don't come from Darwin.
Yeah, that's why I say we on Brundle's channel, he was willing to reject like Aristotle and like every great thinker from before 200 years ago. So he's like, oh, because Aristotle believed in the soul, and you're saying the source of so you're going to use evolution to try to understand every single modern phenomenon, as opposed to the ancients. And then if you're using the ancients for that, how are you going to reject something that was so fundamental to them, like the existence of the soul?
Yeah. And are you gonna argue like Torah ideas, or are you gonna argue like
unlikely
general theism?
It's very possible that I'm prepared for it, but it's very possible Judaism or Torah won't even come up tomorrow night.
Okay. Oh, it's tomorrow night. Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm kind of excited about this, and I assume if it goes well, there'll be more opportunities. And I'd actually like to do like public debates in university campuses. I've been wanting to do that for a while with like doctors and interfaith panels about this, and I assume that if it goes well, I'll probably get more invites, or more people will be interested in this topic, and maybe even me and JF will have a series.
Realistically, you're going to end up on JF. You need to call Halsey out.
Well, the thing is, wait, but part of the reason why David probably is going to like this is that JF's chat is going to be very low in blood sports. Like, JF is a professional. There's not going to be like a lot of.
I did prepare some rhymes, like I did the last time.
You should do that.
JF
do the rhymes.
Farm boy with the high IQ.
Do the rhymes. Dig it, Halsey. I wouldn't make any declarative statements about Halsey's funding, but I would maybe raise questions.
Yeah, I don't know if he asked me about Halsey. Halsey.
I would just bring Kai. Look, you're a smart man. You can connect topics of evolution with anything. So just talk about. Be like, it's interesting. Like the evolutionary instinct, according to the theory of evolution, Halsey's instinct to protect his son's CV. I mean, come on. Like, you can connect the dots.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you saw that me, Babs, and my roommate prepared some rhymes on the kvetch, the morning kvetch. Like public space, master race, big disgrace. A Jew, call him out to his face. Or some more positive. Like the rhymes I gave him on yours were more positive.
Dude, Brundlefly, on my stream the other night, he started dropping Alice in Chains. He started dropping Alice in Chains lyrics. It was so great. He even has a library of references built up in his head.
Yeah, dude, you're gonna dominate.
I said, JF had such a high IQ that he merited to be managed by a Jew.
Yeah.
From the lucky few. I'm like, I'm not sure if somehow we'll get into like a rap battle, but I did prepare a few lines for that could be either negative or positive. So it was more confrontational. You got like public space, big disgrace.
Is everybody else going to be on the show? Like,
or more positive?
Is it just you and him, or is there anybody else going to be on there?
It's probably just going to be me and him. I can't imagine he's going to bring Halsey. If he brings in Halsey, like,
well, Halsey's refusing. Halsey thinks, I don't know. I think Halsey thinks,
what is Halsey going to talk about? Like, I don't think Halsey can hold a candle to Duvid, or like, I mean, on these issues, like I debate with Duvid about like the JQ and like, Jewish role in American society and assimilation, but when it comes to like theology,
and like the conclusion was that you were gay. Like you're
he's definitely gay.
Destroy me, and like, oh, Duvid, you're coalitioning with gays, you're Revenge of the Nerds, and you included gays. And the conclusion of that, you had to delete the stream because I got you to admit that you're gay.
That's true. But what I'm saying is that when it comes to
saying like Halsey, he might prepare. He's like, oh, he's going to come on and he's going to destroy Duvid. Like,
no, when it comes to the theology stuff and the God stuff and like the evolution and that, I don't think like does Halsey even talk about that stuff? He just talks about politics.
I got my library in the background. Saying like, and I've read those books. Saying like, I could pull books off the shelf and quote.
Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah, and I agree with you on all those issues, like 100%, which is why it's going to be fun to watch you debate that.
He's going to have like Halsey come on and like question my Jewish credibility, call me like a fake Jew. I don't see it happening. I can't imagine that working out good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, even JF, I think that would actually increase my credibility because I think most of his audience doesn't like Halsey. So like Halsey attacking me would probably, counter and increase my credibility because they're like, oh, if Halsey doesn't like this guy, he must be good.
I think that's really spot on. As to what's actually how that would go.
Outside of like the political Judaism and the assimilation stuff, I don't think that Halsey or anybody else in the community could talk about the things that Duvid's talking about, like the more theological things. Like when Duvid talks about Rabbi Gottlieb and stuff, like Rabbi Gottlieb doesn't talk about like Kevin McDonald or the JQ. I disagree with Duvid on a lot of those things, but when it comes to like,
because he's insular. I'm saying those rabbis are insular.
I know, but that was like the original debates that I was having with you, is that like those issues are more of like a thing that secular Jews pay attention to, and then you said like, well, I'm not really like a full Jew, blah blah. But I think that even if you say that, the stuff that you know about like God and things are very very high level.
I would argue positively that the Jews are in fact God's chosen people. And I would argue for the affirmative or pro-Jewish opinion that the Bible is true and Jews are in fact God's chosen people.
But that's not going to be. But like the book
history, logic, anti-Semitism, Jewish achievement to bolster.
But you know the famous claims. Jewish book that they
he
have.
Said he was actually interested in that maybe, but we're going to do evolution, the first one.
Yeah, but you know the famous book. They have it like at all the yeshivas. Like I don't.
Permission to believe. Permission to receive.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're not going to use that to justify God on JF show. You're not doing that.
Well, I'm saying I've read the Greek, so I'm saying like the arguments in that are basically all copied from Goyim.
Okay, so I did read that book.
I did read that. That book is one of the first books I read on the subject when I was like 19 years old. But like now I've went on to read the Greeks and all that other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm very much rooting for you on this one. This is like,
like the watchmaker, the blind watchmaker, something that he mentions in that book. I was saying I went on to read
isn't permission to believe like the argument, like they call it the Kuzari principle or whatever? Isn't that or is that something
There's two
else?
separate ones. There are two books in that series: permission to receive and permission to believe. And one is just belief in a God, a creator, and the second one is belief in the Torah. In that the Jews' special mission in the world.
Yeah, my rabbis kept giving me permission to receive. Yeah, but no, I like even though I disagree with you on the secular stuff, and you went to some weird Freudian school and like the JQ and Jews roles as middle managers and weird Revenge of the Nerds. When it comes to Torah as somebody that did go to a yeshiva, I know that you are on top of the game there. So I mean, or in terms of like God, so it's going to be good to watch.
Me and JF are probably about equally autistic, and we could both mention pop culture. So if it's just me and him, it might be pure autism, or if it seems like getting boring, we could bring in some like pop culture references.
No, but do you think the JF has ever talked to somebody who's read Permission to Believe or Receive? Like, do you think he's ever talked to somebody at your understanding of God and stuff like that before? Like, you might be the first person he's ever talked to like that.
He might be. I mean, he went to Duke in North Carolina.
He's talked to Jay Dyer.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dyer beat him actually in that debate. He even mentioned that he saw like Dyer like he wasn't going to beat him. I mean, he stood his ground, but I think Dyer like walked away with the better of that. Although JF stood his ground. He's from Quebec. There's a lot of Hasidim in Quebec. In Montreal, there's like 100,000 Jews in Montreal. There's even like 20,000 Yiddish-speaking Jews in Montreal.
I know, but like the number of Jews that are Orthodox and also educated like you, and also like know of Rabbi Gottlieb, like the chances of somebody like him having had spoken to someone like that is pretty low. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, you don't think like in Montreal circles that he's been to Montreal or the local universities? There's got to be like some Orthodox Jews in the local universities.
You should ask him that. That'd be interesting.
I looked up the basic Jewish history of Montreal. William Shatner, right? I bet JF liked William Shatner.
William Shatner, though. William Shatner would be like, he was like a Jew that assimilated and would not have fit in the Revenge of the Nerds.
But William Shatner's from Montreal.
But he's like Alpha Jew.
And Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen's from Montreal.
Oy vey, Leonard Cohen.
But yeah,
I love watching
Quebec has. Me and Brundle went over the statistics by saying there's 400,000 Jews in Canada, 200,000 in Toronto, and 100,000 in Montreal. So it's likely that JF. I mean, I know JF lives like in the middle of nowhere, but like he probably goes to Quebec pretty often. I'm sure he probably knows the demographic, and he's got to know there's 100,000 Jews, and there's like Hasidic Jews with Payas who speak Yiddish, thousands of them in Montreal. He's got to know that. I mean, maybe he doesn't know that, but I'm assuming he knows that.
One other thing I got to say about is so you gotta split the Jewish anthropology and cultural thing that David understands. Like, I know the demographics and I know all that from the actual theology of it. I've like tried to do that so I could appreciate David's theology more because it's very spot on. But this is the I don't know how many deep conversations JF has had with somebody who believes in like the Torah for real, even though it's possible.
I think he's interesting. That's why he wants to have me on, especially someone who's not anti-alt-right, who's not immediately I think you would probably be more in conflict with him. Like the Jew in you would spurg in your bipolar nature, and you might just pull out your like Jakey like F you, but like I'm not like that. Like I've argued with anti-Semites, like hardcore anti-Semites pretty regularly, and even he's got like David Duke and Mark Collett. I don't think that I'm not going to blow my cool.
No, what I'm
saying, I think you might blow your cool.
No, I only blow my cool when I drink. But the thing is, like someone like Content Watcher, right? I don't know if he's still here anymore. Like he's somebody who is pretty much like not into Jews as like a Babs' mother type of Jew, or like he's going on like he's talking about anti-circumcision and he hates leftist Judaism.
He's in conflict. I'm saying on my channel he was talking like half an hour about converting to Judaism. I know. So he's in one of those conflict because he's a believer. So I mean, JF, I know,
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying even
JF has to know like Rosenberg was a Jew. Like when he spent like half an hour quoting Rosenberg, and I don't have to look it up, but like almost certainly like half an hour he spent talking about a Jew last night. JF has to know that. He has to know like in genetics and biology, not just banking and media, but in genetics and biology, Jews also are extremely disproportionate.
But somebody who's anti-Babs' mom type of Judaism and the leftist stuff and your weird like Freudian school that you went to, or somebody like Content Watcher who is also against those things, because they still believe in God, right? They still value like a lot of the things you have to say. I'm the same way. So even though Content Watcher might go on like anti-Semitic rants or whatever, like jokingly, like he still wants to hear things that David has to say. And this debate with JF is like going to be like your best.
Well, the problem with you, Ford, Analytic, Halsey is clearly.
Don't throw me in. Please don't throw me in with those people.
Well, in terms of this, that you are, because you clearly, your opinions are not representative of the majority of Jews. That's why I went to at length going through the demographic data about liberalism and the belief.
The majority of Jews aren't.
How come you're so you're just going to disregard and be like, I don't care about the majority of Jews, they're just off.
Well, I grew up with Orthodox Jews, and they're closer to like analytical chick than they are to like Babs' mother.
Yes, but I'm saying your average person recognizes that you do not, it's just like you're like the token black conservative. You're the token Jewish conservative. You're not representative of Jews, and so when you just speak the
same thing to you, though. The same thing to you. I mean, most Jews would never.
I'm speaking of a greater generic non-sectarian Judaism.
Most Jews would never ever argue a pro-God argument or an anti-atheist argument. So I can say the same thing.
Well, most Jews wouldn't be as honest as David is.
Well, and I'm coming with a non-sectarian approach, and I have, that's why I put the statistics on my channel before this, where people are going to see the demographics of the wide variety of Jewish opinions in certain things that are more representative of Jews across the spectrum.
Don't throw me in with Luke, though, please.
Well, in terms of that you're representing minority Jewish opinions.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess.
And you're coming off like, I want to be the representative of the Jews, even though my opinions don't represent more than 15% of them.
No. Well, your opinions might not represent all of them either.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's impossible to say, but my generally, I'm more center of the road, and my opinions are more represent of a majority of Jews as opposed to you, where your opinions are directly opposed to the majority of Jews.
Not theologically, though.
Yeah, but it's saying even theologically, the Jews that disagree with me would agree that what I'm saying represents historically their theology. So they may have became Reform, but they would recognize that I'm speaking truthfully about Jewish theology, that's what the sages said, even though they don't prefer to value the sages. And I speak to secular Jews all the time and saying, like, yeah, I mean, they're not rejecting that the Talmud exists, and that this guy is correctly giving over what the Talmud says.
That's true. I agree with you. But most of the Jews that see things your way theologically do not see the things that the way that secular Jews do. Like you mix two versions of Judaism, which are not often mixed. That's all I'm saying. Which is fine. I'm just saying that it's the case.
Well, that's what I'm trying to be. I'm an independent scholar. I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody. But I'm trying to represent, if there is such a thing, mainstream Judaism, and that's why I'm putting you together with Halsey, Analytic, and Ford, is that you're trying to somehow represent Judaism when everybody knows that 80% of Jews do not prescribe to what you say.
I know, but when I say that most Jews do not mix the theology you have with the secular values, and then you say I'm an individual scholar, I'm not really one of them, I'm a half Jew, I'm just understand them, like you say that constantly, that you are able.
Yeah, because I'm not speaking on behalf of Judaism. I'm speaking about Judaism.
I know, but when you go on a stream, when you go on a stream with a yarmulke on and payos, right? People are not going to think that you're speaking about Judaism. They're going to think that you are speaking on behalf of Judaism. That's number one. Number two,
people can think what they want, and saying, and people
who are low IQ.
People who want to check my credibility, they could just go to my YouTube page and they'd be like, oh, he's got the Told Sovereign Mitzvah Rebbe on it. He's got Sri Meyer Zilberberg, or the rabbis I have on it. Or they could see my credentials and be like, well, he did learn in Mir Yeshiva. Like, you admit it. I know your rabbis. Saying like, I know your rabbis that you studied under.
I know them too. But what I'm telling you is that how many of the rabbis that you studied under, would agree with multicultural whatever, and are interfaithing with Muslims or interfaithing with Hare Krishna? That side of you is unrelated to the Orthodox side, and I don't think that people who watch these streams will be able to split those hairs. And it's not my responsibility to teach them that, but I'm just letting you know that that's a reality. And someone like Brundlefly isn't going to know that either, because he has no idea about Judaism. So I mean,
well, yeah, but Brundlefly spent like 2-3 hours with me going over the data.
I study under Rebbe Dubin.
Yeah, I'm saying we went over the data. We went over the ADL statistics last night. We went over the Pew survey and the Federation data, demographic data. And I made my point to Brundle, with like the concentric circles, where would he fall in that, in the different opinions of Judaism? And that was my point. We're Kevin McDonald says, we're diverse people. There's all different types and views. And I purposely put those statistics out there so people would be able to see, what the most recent data on how Jews feel.
And all I'm saying is that Halsey,
and I'm not moralizing. I'm saying I'm not saying Jews should do this. Jews should do that.
I'm more of a fan of yours than you think. But I'm saying that like Halsey or Analytical Chick or Luke or whatever, like they might not appreciate your Torah side because they're so upset about your like leftist Jewish side. But I still do appreciate the Torah side. I'm just trying to explain that.
I got to run. Actually, I got to. Rush hour. I got to go visit my mom, and I got to beat rush hour.
Right,
but yeah, it was great streaming. I'm not sure if there's going to be a stream tonight, or if it'll be.
Write down notes before you debate them. Write down points. Like talk about inconsistencies with free will, inconsistencies with his views on psychiatry and atheism. Ask where he's coming from with his atheism. Is it moral or is it scientific? Because I want to see you. I do want to see you win on this issue. So it'll be a good debate.
I did watch a bunch of debates last week in practice. I'm going to watch a few more debates, probably today and tomorrow in practice of, the top people on the subject.
And you go off the cuff, but you should write down some notes.
I would. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't get bogged down too much with that though.
Okay. I got to see my mom. I got to run. Right, so I appreciate you guys coming on.
Yeah.
And, if there's a stream tonight, maybe I'll be on. Otherwise, wish me luck
Shalom.
And maybe we'll do after stream after the thing on my channel, or if you want to host it, Brundle, if you're up to it, or you will see what happens.
All right.
Good luck, dude. Good luck.
Okay. Take care. Have a great day. Forgot to end the stream. Anyone still watching? God bless. Enjoy. Take care. Bye-bye. Shalom. Thanks a lot. Yeah, forgot to end it.